Welcome back. So we are still looking at cognitive theories to try to understand how our students learn and think. And today we're going to be looking at a specific one called the information processing memory model. It is quite an interesting theory because memory is fascinating. So have you ever had this happen? Got an A on the test but forgot everything an hour later? Or how about this? Trying to remember someone's name a minute after you met them? Memory is extremely fickle. We are going to, by the end of this lesson, understand how these things happen and get a better understanding of how our memory works and how to use it to our advantage. Okay, first, the information processing model. They view the mind as being similar to a computer. So this is obviously a more contemporary theory than some of the ones that we've looked at. So how does our mind relate to a computer? Well, to them, learning can be seen as, first of all, input, getting information and putting it into your brain or typing it into your computer. Processing, which is thinking about the information. Storage, so for your computer when you hit save, or for your brain when you're studying. And retrieval. Retrieval is when you try to find something on your computer or when you try to pull something out of your brain on test day. So you can see some similarities there. So let's continue. I have an interesting question. How much do you think your memory can hold? Well, this question was posed to a mathematician named John Griffith, and after doing a bit of postulating, he said, all right, take a set of encyclopedias. Your brain, your memory is capable of holding 100 times this. That's amazing. Now, I'm going to assume that perhaps the quality of what's in our memory may not be as great as 100 sets of encyclopedias, but still it shows the amazing potential of our memory system. So, I've just told you how amazing your memory is. Let's do a memory test. All right, if you have any change nearby, don't peek. You have probably seen pennies every day of your life. Let's see if we can pick one out of a lineup. So here they are. Feel free to go ahead and hit pause so you have plenty of time to look over them and decide which one you think the real penny is. Okay, I'm going to assume that you've hit pause and you've had a moment to look. You ready to see which one is the real penny? Drum roll, please. Where's it going to stop? That one. All right, did you get the right one or not? I've done this in class for quite some time, and I can say some of the most commonly picked ones are this one, and this one, and this one. Oh gosh, there's another one. This one is often picked too. Why did we get that wrong? I mean, I just told you how amazing your memory is. Got any ideas? Well, we're going to see in a bit. We'll come back to this and we'll talk about why you may not have gotten this right, even though a penny is something you see every day. So keep this one in mind. All right, so here is the memory model we're going to be looking at. You can see this is from the late 60s. Now, you might be thinking, memory, I don't want my students just to memorize things. This isn't just about memorizing. Long-term memory is the idea of learning something well enough that it stays with you perhaps forever. I bet as teachers we would all like our students to know something that well. So we're going to see how information can come into our brain and hopefully how some of it ends up staying with you forever. Now, for each of these memory stores, sensory memory, working memory, long-term memory, we're going to be looking at what is it, how long can you hold things there, and how much can it hold? So, we're obviously going to start with the first one, which is sensory memory. So, sensory memory takes in everything from your environment, all environmental stimuli from your senses. So, see down here? So, everything you see, hear, taste, touch, and smell, very briefly, checks in, or shall we say, registers with the sensory memory. In fact, sometimes this is even called the sensory register. So, for instance, here's just another visual aid to take a look at it. So, everything from your senses coming into your brain is taken in by your sensory receptors. Some of it is forgotten, actually a good bit of it is forgotten, and then some of it moves on for further processing in the memory system. So in terms of duration and capacity, this one's probably pretty obvious. The duration, we already said briefly, less than a fraction of a second. So an incredibly short period of time. In terms of capacity, extremely large because it's taking in everything that your senses are picking up from the environment. Now, what's interesting about the sensory memory is you'll probably never even know that you have one. The only way I can perhaps even show you that you might have one is with this visualization. So imagine it's dusk. You're outside with sparklers, maybe it's 4th of July, and one of your friends starts to twirl it around in a circle. Eventually you'll see a little tail behind that sparkler. Now it won't be as vivid as this one below. This was done with time-lapse photography, but still you will see a bit of a tail. That tail is your sensory memory, which has held successive images of that sparkler that it has held for a fraction of a second, forming a bit of a tail. Again, that's the only way you might even know that you have it, so it's not incredibly helpful to us as teachers. So let's move along. On our memory model, we can see next is this area right here called attention and perception. Let's see what that is all about, because it looks like all incoming stimuli goes here. We can see this blue arrow here indicates everything that is lost. Let's see what the role is of attention and perception. So, here's some common memory problems that you might relate to. So we've got Liam Neeson. I will look for you. I will find you. Right here, bro. Have you ever had that happen? You're trying to find your phone or your car keys or your eyeglasses and you realize that they are right there in front of you and you didn't even notice it? Or the person who just perpetually has no idea where their wallet or their keys are, okay? That's one common memory problem. This is another one. Girls can't find their hair ties, but they know what you said 7 months ago at 6:30 p.m. Okay, why is this? So what if I told you that the answer to this common problem is similar to the answer for this? Why is it we can't remember little things that we should remember? It's because, dun dun dun, drum roll again, in order to move information from your sensory memory into your short-term memory, there are two things that are required. All right, required. What's required? Attention. Now that's a pretty simple word, but it is huge when it comes to memory. Focusing and using mental effort is required for that information to be retained. So let's go backwards a second. Back, all the way to here. So for the person who perpetually does not know where their keys or their wallet or their phone is, it is because when they set them down, they're not paying attention to where they put them, and they probably put them in different places all the time. Now, if you would take a moment to go walk in the door and say, phone, okay, I'm setting my phone on the TV, and go about your day. If you took that moment to pay attention to it, you'd be more likely to remember it. Same thing here. All right, girls can't find their hair ties, but remember exactly what you said 7 months ago, because we may not pay attention to where our hair ties are, but we might pay attention to something if we find it either sweet or harmful or somehow emotionally connect to it. We remember things differently. The things we pay attention to are the things that we remember. Same thing here. When's the last time you really paid attention to a penny? That you really sat and looked at it and wondered about which way is he facing? Is he facing this way or this way? And what's written above him and what's written beside of him? We simply don't always pay attention. So, moving forward again, the idea that to move information from just being something you see, hear, taste, touch, and smell to something that's actually in your head requires focusing and using mental effort. Here's a quick little, just a funny.
I know it's easy for your mind to wander. I want you to concentrate on me.
All right, so the reason I included that silly little video clip is because attention is a limited resource. We can't pay attention to everything that we encounter every day. We can't pay attention to everything that our senses take in. We see, hear, taste, touch, and smell a lot of stuff, and you can't pay attention to all of it. So it's kind of like when you check your email. So this is a snapshot of my spam folder in my Yahoo account. I do not have enough time to go through every single email on my Yahoo. I just don't. So what I do is I scan down it, and I quickly try and pick out what do I need to pay attention to. So when I see rewards voucher, okay, maybe that. The rest of it I'm going to ignore. Same thing with our sensory memory. So we're bombarded with information. We have to filter out and decide of all of that, what are we going to pay attention to? What are we going to give mental effort to? The next part of it is called perception. Perception is interpreting that information, giving it meaning. Now, please don't get these confused because it is really easy to get these flip-flopped. Within the world of information processing model, remember, attention is simply focusing on something. Perception is thinking about it. Okay, so kind of like here. In the world of attention, they are both looking at a glass of water. But in the world of perception, they are deciding if it's half full or if it's half empty. Same thing here. So attention is look at me, allocating your mental activity to a stimulus. Whereas perception is thinking about it and making sense of it, interpreting it to give it meaning. So here I'm paying attention to it. I see it's a red liquid in a bottle. Perception is going, oh, it's hot. It's hot sauce. So you need both of those things. So I kind of like this quote. I hear you. I'm just not listening to you. Hearing you is attention. Listening to you is the perception part. So hearing you means my ears know that you're talking. I realize that this is going on. Perception means I'm actually thinking about the words. And one more. I love this one. Don't just listen for the sake of listening. Listen for the sake of understanding. All right, so we have seen this part right here, attention and perception, because remember, everything goes here. Most of it gets lost, but whatever you focus on and think about, whoop, goes right here. So next up, let's see what working memory is. Now, working memory is also called your short-term memory. They are somewhat synonymous. There is a bit of a difference between them, but we can use them interchangeably for the sake of this class. This is where incoming information, or really where any information is being processed. This is where thinking occurs. This is where we try to give meaning to information. One way I like to think of this is whatever is in your head at any given moment, that is what is in your working memory. So if right now you're thinking about having a snack, that's what's in your working memory. If right now you're thinking about the memory model, that's what's in your working memory. So the information that is there can come from one of two places. It can either be incoming information, new stuff from your sensory memory. So if you are thinking about the memory model, this is where the information is coming from that is in your working memory right now. Incoming information from your sensory memory because you are listening to me and you are looking at the information. That's not the only way stuff can get into your working memory. It can also be something that is retrieved from your long-term memory. So if you're thinking about what you want to have for a snack and you're picturing your snack cabinet and what all you have, well, you're retrieving information from your long-term memory of what you know is in your kitchen. Okay? So that's your working memory. So let's take a look a bit more deeply at this working or short-term memory. Remember, for each one, we want to see capacity and we want to see duration. So in terms of capacity, it is pretty limited. It can hold 5 to 9 items. This has also been written as 7 plus or minus 2, but I just like to put the range, 5 to 9 items. Think of all the things in your life that you need to memorize. They are typically between 5 and 9 items, such as zip codes, telephone numbers, social security numbers. That one's a little bit long, but they are typically within that range. Let's take a look. I'm going to give you some letters. Now, the letters I'm going to give you are longer than the capacity of your short-term memory. It's about 15 letters. I'm going to give you a moment to look at them. Then I want you to keep them in your head, and we're going to wait a moment, and we're going to try and write them down, okay? So here they are. Look over them. Try and get them in your head. They're going to go away in 3, 2, 1. Now wait just a moment. Sorry about that. Wait another moment. Write them down. All right, let's see how you did. Here they are again. Compare what you wrote. Did you get all of them right? Did you get some of them right? If you got all of them right, did any of you happen to see a pattern? Check this out. So rather than it being 15 letters, if you saw a pattern, suddenly it's a lot less to remember. It's X, that's 1, 2 items, 3 items, 4 items, 5 items, 6 items. That's totally doable. That is within your short-term memory range. What is that? What do we call that? That is something that our brains tend to do on its own to help us remember things. We call it chunking. So chunking is when we combine items together into larger units so we can fit more into our memory, so we can increase the capacity. So for instance, telephone numbers. Well, actually down here I've got a social security number. Let's go with that one. So I mentioned that earlier. A social security number is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh, it is just right on the edge of what you're capable of remembering. So what do you usually do? You chunk it. And in fact, the feds have helped us with that by putting little dashes in there. So you remember 3 numbers, 2 numbers, and 4 numbers. And suddenly it's 3 chunks of information rather than 9. So chunking is very helpful for your short-term memory. We do this with phone numbers, area code, prefix, and the last 4 digits. Think about your PID, your student code at the university. If they were to put a dash in the middle of it, it would probably be so much easier to remember. All right, so your working memory, the idea of hacking it. How can you make it work for you? So here we've got this guy who's not doing any chunking at all, and we can see he can juggle about 5 items, and everything else he's lost. If you use chunking, wow, look how much more you can juggle or keep in your working memory. You might find that when you're studying for a test, that you might kind of study this way to keep more in there. All right, so we've seen capacity. Next is duration. How long does it stay in our short-term memory? What is the duration? Instead of just giving you the answer, we're going to do another demonstration. But first, I'd like to point out short-term memory is extremely temporary. You all probably remember Dory from Finding Nemo. That she had basically no short-term memory whatsoever. She was constantly forgetting everything. I love this one. If I've just met you and I've already forgotten your name, I guarantee it. It is really hard. Short-term memory is not only temporary, but it's pretty finicky as well. If you've seen the movie 50 First Dates, in it, Drew Barrymore has a certain type of amnesia. It's called anterograde amnesia. And when you have anterograde amnesia, you're unable to make future memories. You're kind of stuck with what you already know at the point at which you receive the amnesia. So we're going to see a clip from that movie of a gentleman in it who has a 10-second short-term memory, just to give you an idea of what that would be like. So again, imagine if your short-term memory was only 10 seconds long and you had no long-term memory.
In any case, Lucy, your condition is stable, but most likely permanent. I'm so sorry, dear. But it could be worse.
Yeah, how?
I think you should meet 10-second Tom. Distinguished clinical subject, Tom.
Hi, I'm Tom. Henry. Marlon. Doug.
Lucy.
Hi. Oh, those are cool flip-flops. Where'd you get them?
You like those? It's an interesting story. I was over in the North Door the other day.
Hi, I'm Tom.
Huh? Oh, Henry.
Hi. Marlon. Tom lost part of his brain in a hunting accident. His memory only lasts 10 seconds.
He was in an accident? That's terrible.
Don't worry, you'll totally get over it in about 3 seconds.
Get over it? I mean, what happened? Did I get shot in the brain? Hi, I'm Tom.
Hi, I'm Lucy.
And, you know, although it is meant to be comical because it is a comedy, there are individuals with anterograde amnesia. It lasts longer than 10 seconds, but who are in a similar situation. Okay, so what's the duration of your short-term memory? It is short. It is typically about 20 to 30 seconds. Now you might go, ooh, I'm not that much better off than Tom. Well, the difference is you have a long-term memory. You're capable of moving things along and making permanent new memories. Individuals with anterograde amnesia are not. So let's do another activity. We'll have a few of these today where you need to write things in your notes. Okay, so play along with me. This time I'm going to give you a set of numbers. I want you to read them. I want you to try to keep them in your head, but don't write them down until I tell you. All right, here they are. I'll give you a little bit of time to look at them. Okay, they're going away. Now, don't write anything down yet, okay? Wait till I say go. So just sit there and try to keep it in your head. We need to wait so that we can see how long you can keep it in your head. All right, go ahead and try and write them down. You ready to check yourself? All right, here they are again. So, how'd you do? If you did poorly, perhaps you just kind of forgot them. You lost them. Perhaps you were distracted by something. If you did well, what were you doing during that? And it was only about 15 seconds that we waited. What were you doing during that 15 seconds? I would bet that you did something that we call rehearsal, where you sang it to yourself over and over and over again. That is another great strategy that our brain uses to help keep things in our short-term memory. Rehearsal. It increases the duration. In fact, you can say it to yourself over and over again for a whole hour if you want to. That is actually a strategy that Dory uses in Finding Nemo when she says, P. Sherman, 42 Wallaby Way, Sydney. And she keeps saying that over and over and over and over. She's using rehearsal because she knows that she has a hard time remembering things. So I saw this and thought it was relevant. So when you meet someone for the first time and you're trying to make sure that you don't forget their name, it is a strategy you can use. So if you meet someone and they say, hi, my name is Tom, and you don't want to forget that, you might try and think in your head, Tom, 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 Tom for a bit and hope that it sticks. And I thought this was also funny. If you can't read the bottom, it says, can we hurry up and get to the test? My short-term memory is better than my long-term memory. So, you might remember a meme that we looked at a while ago. So, you might recall this meme from the very beginning of our video. Got an A on the test, but forgot everything an hour later. If you've had that happen to you, it is most likely because you crammed for the test. Now, what do I mean by cramming? That means that probably the night before or the morning of, you pulled out your notes and you looked over them and you looked over them, and you looked over them, and you kept repeating information over and over in your head, trying to remember it. Let's look at our memory model. So hopefully you can see my laser pointer. So you're studying, the information is in your working memory, and you are using rehearsal big time. And you're probably using chunking as well. So you're chunking stuff together, repeating it over and over and over, and just reading your notes over and over. You take the test. Maybe even you get an A on it. But what happens is now you've stopped rehearsing. You stop thinking about it. And guess what happens to all that stuff you were just studying? Boop. Lost. It's gone. You can get an A on a test, but that information never made it to your long-term memory. And remember, that's the goal. If learning is to be permanent, and if learning is something that you keep with you, it has to get here. When you are cramming, you're just using it right here. And it's very easy for the majority, if not all of it, to just go away. So we want to be able to get beyond working memory, right? So again, lost is where that information goes. So similar to what we saw on 50 First Dates, that is what happens with anterograde amnesia. So all they know is what is in their working memory at that time, the conversation that they're having, the show that they're watching, and as soon as that stimulus is over, that person is gone or that event is over with, boom, it's lost, it's gone. Nothing ever makes it to the long-term memory. That kind of reminded me of this cartoon.
Charles, you got any advice for me on how to start the season off fresh?
Well, your new Foot Locker gear, that's a big part of it. Now you just need a short memory.
Short memory?
All the greats have short memories.
So when you had a bad game, you just forgot about it?
Never had a bad game.
You don't remember they used to call you the round mound rebound? Remember when you threw that guy through the window?
I'm a pacifist.
What about the time you...
Look, all I know is all the greats have short memories. Scottie Pippen knows.
I sure do. And I'm the greatest Chicago Bull of all time.
And that's how it's done.
So again, it's meant to be silly, but the idea is, if you never let stuff get past your working memory, whoop, it's gone. It's like it never happened. But again, that's definitely not what we want to happen in the classroom. We want our information to go here. As students, this should be your goal. Because if you're in a class, hopefully you're wanting to add to your knowledge base and take the information with you. And if you're a teacher, you're hoping for the same thing. So how do we make this happen? I guess first of all, we need to see what is our long-term memory. So what is it? It is also called your permanent memory store. Now, it might seem trite that I have a picture of a jar of marbles, but your long-term memory can really be compared to a jar of marbles, and we will do so. So, permanent memory store. Now, here's something interesting about your long-term memory. So, let's say this jar is your long-term memory, and every marble is a memory or a set of memories. Piaget would call them schemas. Information in your long-term memory is connected to one another. Memories can be related to one another. They form an organized network. Let me try to prove that to you. So here's one of our last activities where you'll need to write things in your notes. This one is a bit more psychological, so I'm going to give you a word. Once you hear that word, I want you to think of the next word that immediately pops into your head. Don't give it much thought. What pops into your head next, write that down. Then, look at your new word, think of the next word that pops in your head, and write that down. Do this quickly until you have 7 words on your list. So again, do not put thought into it. You're going to hear my word. What pops in your head, write it down. Look at that word. What pops in your head, write it down until you have 7 words. Okay? So, your word to start with is horse. Write down your next word, then the next one, and the next one. If you need more time, hit pause. Now, if we were in class, I would have people read out their lists and we would share them and talk about them, but we can't really do that here. So, what I want you to do is look at your list. I want you to ask yourself, do you see any commonalities? Sometimes I'll have people who go on kind of a farm theme, and from horse, they'll come up with things like cow or chicken or tractor or barn. Okay, that makes sense. Sometimes we will have people that go from horse to sports teams, like the Colts, and then perhaps moving on down the line to different sports teams. The first time I did it, my daughter was quite young, and I immediately went to My Little Pony because it was a show that she was watching a good bit. I've had some people who go to things like totally random things like a peanut butter sandwich or a marshmallow or a cotton ball. Who knows? So what does this mean? So first of all, it can tell you something about your own memory. It can tell you about how much of a logical or organized thinker you are. So if you tended to keep things in the same category like barnyard or like sports, you're perhaps quite an organized thinker. If you went to something oddball like peanut butter sandwich, well, perhaps you're not quite as organized in your thinking. Or perhaps it was just some really random memory that really connected to you. This activity shows, again, a lot of things. Let me try to summarize. The main point here being, let me skip ahead to our next slide. When it comes to your long-term memory, you can see that the information in the long-term memory is interconnected, that somehow you can go from a memory about a horse into a bunch of memories about a farm, into memories about sports teams, into memories about TV shows, okay? That each of those lines, each of those words you wrote down were memories that were interconnected somehow. But those connections are based upon two things, and this is to me what the interesting point is based upon your prior knowledge and experiences. So, people who grew up in rural areas or have experience with horse riding, your list is going to be completely different from people who grew up in urban areas. People who like sports, your list is going to be totally different from people who don't. Same thing with people who have kids or babysit. You know, all of us have a completely different jar of marbles, which is why we can all hear the word horse and come up with very different lists. Okay, moving on. In terms of duration and capacity, to be honest, researchers don't know exactly, but the prevailing theory is that the duration is possibly a lifetime. That once a memory goes into that long-term memory storage, it stays there forever. Now, it can get dusty, it can get hard to find, but it's still in there. And in terms of capacity, the, again, prevailing theory is that it is unlimited. Now, that does not take into consideration dementia or memory disorders, okay? But within the realms of normal development, the capacity should be unlimited. You should never reach a moment where you have to say, may I be excused, my brain is full. Okay, so let's see. We're going to go ahead and pause here, and we will pick up at this point for part 2 of information processing. So thank you for your attention.